Morning. So obviously, I just wanted to get you on this morning to the sort of the Teacher's Point of View podcast, because obviously I've been following you on LinkedIn, and Eddie, you're a remarkable man. I mean, you've had a fantastic journey. Could you just kind of explain to everybody your sort of journey into teaching and sort of where you're at now?
Yeah, my journey started way back when, but it's mainly because my mum was a teacher. She's retired now, and then my eldest sister, who works with your sister, went into teaching, and then me and my twin brother. So I have a twin brother. So we went to university, and then I didn't see anything else other than going into a teaching career. I think it was a family kind of trait. So I started my career as a PE teacher with my twin brother, and my mum was our first head of department at a school in Havering. So one thing I'd take away from that is that I had guidance, and I had a role model that I could look up to, and kind of gave me the basics. And I was always in education, always in schools. I was on school trips with my mum when she was leading school trips all across Europe. And I think that's where my passion for teaching and learning came in, but also, giving back to society and making sure students had more than I had. So when I was at school with my brother, we didn't really get to travel. So my mum's during a sports head of PE role, we joined in and got students to travel across to the Netherlands, to Germany, to Spain, because I think it's really about giving students opportunity. And if they have opportunity, then they'll aspire. So then I became a drama teacher, which was random enough. But so I moved from PE to drama, and I was doing a combination of both. My brother was working with me, but he left to go to a local school in Havering too. And then after 6 years in that role, I moved internationally to a British school in the Netherlands. And I was there for 3 years. And again, I was in charge of extracurricular work. So I was the director of extracurricular activities, allowing students to travel all over the world this time. I mean, the British school system has a little bit more money than state schools, but it was a passion of mine again. And then after 3 years there, I came home, and currently I'm still at Bower Park Academy in Romford in Havering, and I started as a cover teacher, just coming back from the Netherlands, and then working my way up to head of house, associate assistant head, assistant principal, and currently I sit on vice principal in charge of teaching and learning, and that's where my real passion is.
Fantastic. What just if for anyone that doesn't know what sort of that responsibility entails, what are your duties as sort of the one in charge of teaching and learning?
So quality first teaching is what teachers get paid to do. Everything goes back to what happens in the classroom. So I oversee the training program for staff. So I source pedagogy and research, CPD libraries, CPD training. When I first started at Bower Park Academy, I had a brilliant mentor called Jo Yates, who works for the same trust as I. She's phenomenal, and she kind of held my hand and guided me through it. We were doing all the research, all the pedagogy, and then disseminating that to the staff so we could see impact the other side of the end of the results at Key Stage 4. So everything to do with teaching and learning, down from assessment for learning, behaviour for learning, but also the strategies and activities that we need our teachers to kind of embrace in order to move our students' learning forward.
Yeah, I mean, because there's many different routes you can take down within teaching, whether it be pastoral, whether it be teaching and learning, whether it be curriculum-based progression. What was it for you that kind of sort of steered you towards the teaching and learning?
I mean, I think any good SLT member has a balance of all of the aspects of senior leadership. So we've all taken part in our pastoral and our safeguarding training. But for me, teaching and learning is about, allowing teachers to embrace the pedagogy that's going to give back to students to enable them to move forward in progress and have outcomes that they can use further in their life. And that's the passion for me, that I get to see transformation through teachers, but also imparting their knowledge, skills and activities and strategies to the students, and getting some phenomenal results.
Fantastic. I mean, just so everyone's aware, anyone that doesn't know Bowers Park, I mean, what are the general demographics of the school?
So our demographic, it was sitting around about 42% disadvantage. It's a little bit better now, about 35, 38. And to be honest, 3-4 years ago, we were a special measures school. Our outcomes weren't great. And under the leadership of Simon London, who is the CEO for Empower Learning Trust, and the principal at the time, Stuart McLaughlin, we built a team and we needed to change that round. And the best thing about the demographic we live in, and I work here and I've grown up here, that I know the students, I know their challenges. They're very much like myself and my family. And then the teaching staff, they just wanted it. They wanted to be a good school. And we turned the school round from special measures to good within 15 months.
And how hard is that to create from a school being in special measures? How hard? What's the journey like to be able to get to where you've got to?
It's tough. It's hard work. It is really hard work. However, it makes it easier if you've got a staff that want to transform and students that want to transform the school. You know, at the end of the day, we're there to serve our community. Our clientele are our students and their parents and carers. And we were in such a great position that they wanted it, and they wanted to be a part of that journey. And it's about that, creating that culture and ethos of you are good enough to be in a good school. And I will say the students and the staff just embraced it, and we were able to work with it. But it was hard work, you know, strict key performance indicators, clear actions, strategies, milestones, measurement of those milestones, enabled to move the school forward.
Did you find that there were certain teachers that were already there, found it difficult to adjust to the way that you were sort of moving?
I think at the beginning, some staff found it difficult because it was a new way of working, and we used a different way of teaching and use of pedagogy and research. However, I will say all the staff that are still with us, that have been there before my time as well, embraced it. And again, that was because of the senior leadership team, Stuart McLaughlin, Simon London, and the vision that they created, striving for excellence and raising the bar for all our students. And they all embraced it.
Yeah. I mean, how hard is it to keep those parents getting and those children at Bowers Park, especially when they were sort of back then 4 years ago when you were in special measures? So then, like, say, no, we are going to do this. This is how we're going to take our school to the next level. We need you to have faith in us. How hard was that?
I think parent engagement is hard, especially if there's a reputation. And one thing the senior leadership team did was got out to all the primary schools, all the feeder schools throughout the catchment area. We were in the paper. We made sure that our social media presence was increased. Our website was transformed. We had apps, and technology can be a bit of a downside sometimes, but we needed to connect with the parents and make sure that they knew we were listening to them, because it's like everything, especially with student outcomes, it's that triangulation between teachers, parent, carer and student. And if that triangle doesn't work, then there's a missing link. So it was about building trust and building a relationship, all from scratch.
Fantastic. I mean, just touching base on what you said about the level of disadvantaged students. Could you just define what a disadvantaged student is in your opinion, and what that really means for the way that you have to sort of accommodate these students?
So disadvantaged students that come from a range of backgrounds. There's no set background, but they may receive free school meals. They may have received it in the past. They may be from a single parent family that finds it difficult to make ends meet, especially in today's climate. However, I'm a great believer that every student is the same. They all have the same starting point. And the biggest thing that we do as a school is we're very, very inclusive, that everyone has the same. We always teach to the top, and we'll adjust our learning down to make sure that there's nice scaffolds that all students, regardless of background and where they're from and where they want to be, that everyone has the right chances and the same chances as everyone else.
So how difficult has that been over the last 7 months?
I think through the pandemic, there's two aspects to the pandemics and the effect on education, in my opinion. One is the teachers' workload, and suddenly we were told the same as the rest of the population. The night before, we're shutting. So being ready, and also making sure our provision is ready. So we had to make sure within a matter of hours that students were trained on remote learning. So we use Microsoft. Staff had capacity and had their equipment and technology and were trained and confident in using that. And that's been a process that we've kind of developed and evolved. And we've had to engage with the parent community again and the student community, because our first offer of education remotely was very different to where it is now and moving forward. We had a lot of work packs and a lot of photocopying, where now we're trying to use one system, but it's an evolution. Technology changes so quickly as well. So we've found a system that we feel that works for us. And during the pandemic, we've been able to make sure that students felt confident, parents felt confident. And also we've just signed up with a partnership with a local college that will offer a digital skills course for any parents and carers that want to embrace that technology and work with us, because, you know, moving forward, blended learning, remote learning, it seems that it's here to stay. And there's a benefit for that. I mean, homework or home learning, whatever you want to call it, the fact that we've got technology where students have been working independently, for us as a school is fantastic, when we want to kind of embrace that and use that as a skill set that they can take forward, because they're great attributes to have, because we don't know what's going to happen over the next year or two. So that's where we've kind of developed and evolved our remote learning process.
Sure. I mean, just touching base on the ones that are sort of from the most disadvantaged, so what I'm trying to get is the ones that have really low financial incomes, or the ones that have suffered because of COVID and their families have gone out of work. I don't know if you've had much of that at Bowers Park with obviously some of your students' families suffering because of it. I spoke to Dave Malachi, who's an assistant head at he's a deputy principal at London Enterprise Academy in Tower Hamlets, and he informed me that there was 200 students that needed laptops, and the government only gave 11. I mean, how are you able to facilitate resources for those kids that really need it?
I mean, it's hard because schools' budgets are tight as well. But I mean, the government did step in and sent a quota of laptops depending on the demographic of the school and the trust. So we had to have laptops there. But again, we haven't got enough for all year groups, and they were focused to start with on year 11. Now we are waiting another shipment from the government of another batch of laptops. I mean, we're quite lucky that the principal's currently writing a letter this half term to ask parents, do they need a laptop? We have some tablets to repurpose in school, but it is difficult because it's not just the laptop, is it? It's the infrastructure at home, the data, the modem. So it's really difficult in order to move that forward, especially with our disadvantaged students. And to touch on our free school meal students, again, I think it was about 200 we had. And I will say the staff at Bower Park and the canteen ladies were just phenomenal at the beginning. We were making 200 packs out. We were giving them out. We had staff that volunteering, driving around, dropping them off. It was just, a fantastic community effort.
Yeah, I mean, you said obviously there's massive budget restrictions within schools. I mean, their budget restrictions are the best of years anyway, aren't they? I mean, this year is probably even tighter with all the new procedures that you've had to follow. How much of an impact does it have on these kids? And how much of an impact does it have for you as teachers to not feel emotionally obliged to try to do something when you're quite limited with the resources that you've been given?
It's really difficult. You're torn. We've got students that still don't have remote access, but all we can do is provide both work packs, delivery, post, and then on our online platforms. But it is really, really difficult. Again, it's more than just the teachers. It's more than just their parents. It's society has to change in terms of, we've got to make sure that if education is inclusive, it needs to be accessible for all. Yeah. And I think it's bigger than me, bigger than the school. I think it's a government issue that they need to address and make sure that we've got an infrastructure. I mean, everyone says, everyone's got a phone or they've got data. They haven't. They haven't, or they can't use it properly in order to do actual work that's going to make sure that their outcomes at year 11 are right for what steps they want to take next. So the government need to look at, in my opinion, they need to look at how we're going to make sure that education is accessible for all, because this isn't going to go away quickly.
I mean, what do you think that they could do?
I mean, it's difficult. I mean, you look at the news each day, and they say we're going to put, was it yesterday? They're going to put 200 million into clubs for half term and school holidays. I mean, it's just fighting fire with fire. You're going to give full free school meals, or are you just going to opt in to give school clubs? And I know that children need to be engaged and educated, but they need to set their priorities in terms of how we're going to build an infrastructure. Mm-hmm. That's the key, in my opinion. They have to build an infrastructure where education, if we're saying it's inclusive, it needs to be inclusive for all.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you sort of mentioned on the free school meals, and I think it's such a massive topic at the moment, isn't it? I read yesterday that Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak have both come out and they've said that, well, we're not gonna go back on that decision. We're gonna stand firm on no free school meals over the holidays, and we've given the council 63 million to distribute in June, and the council come back and said, well, no, that's not enough. Like, there's so many families out there that need support, and they said, well, no, 63 million is plenty, and it's difficult because unemployment has risen. There's a lot more people that the furlough is coming to an end, and I'd imagine over the next couple of months it's probably going to get a lot worse. So we need to obviously think, like, long term, how are we going to actually be able to, like, resolve this problem?
I mean, it's society as well. I mean, we've seen such good things as well from the pandemic. Even today I was reading that, Havering Council are giving out free school meals. The local community centre from 11 to 1 are giving out packages. Nando's have given us some vouchers for the disadvantaged students. There's grab bags in Morrison's. I think society, we have to make sure we're educating everyone to give back to those in need. That's where I'll stand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is one of the big reasons why I wanted to do this podcast, actually, is because I wanted to get, you as teachers are on the front line, and it's not spoken about. I believe the NHS is spoken about massively, and teachers aren't spoken about enough because you are risking your lives every single day, aren't you? What in terms of as a teacher, how difficult is it to put your life on hold, risk your life every day, and to go in on the front line every single day?
I think, we're lucky that we work in a profession where we haven't had to take on any furlough or there's not much unemployment. I know positions have been paused for any new appointments in a majority of schools, but we're very, very lucky. And we are paid by the government in order to serve our community. But it's difficult. There's parents like myself at home during pandemic, and you're trying to teach online lessons and you've got 2 3-year-olds running around screaming. And it's all those added aspects of workload, but also making sure that we appreciate our well-being, our mental health, allowing staff to take time out from teaching in terms of school holidays and not just having interventions and going in and doing extra revision sessions, using our time wisely in order to make sure that, teachers' well-being and mental health is stable, because we're back in the classroom next week delivering to 8, 9, depending how many in your school, students. So it's difficult. Huh?
How difficult is that to do? Because that's a lot, right? Majority of years, it's difficult enough to recruit teachers to fill out the timetable and of good quality days. There's some teachers, there's plenty of teachers about, but good quality teachers are quite rare to find nowadays, right? And in particular this year, where there's not been a lot of movement, to try to get teachers to fill out the timetable of making sure that the kids are learning, but then also being mindful of their mental health and keep giving them a balance. Like, how are you able to sort of deliver that effectively?
It's difficult. Every school's doing it slightly different. So from a teacher's perspective, our school is set up in zones. So it's difficult for staff at the moment. They're having to travel from classroom to classroom to classroom, and teachers are tired. And it's also different because normally it would be your classroom. You'd have a base. You're going into each lesson and there's 30 pairs of eyes staring at you with your laptop and your lunch and your water bottle. And it's those things that people don't necessarily understand outside of education. And schools are doing it differently as well. I understand that, but it's kind of having to balance that. So with your staff, we have to thank your staff regularly. So we send postcards. We have weekly. You've been chosen for a chocolate if we've seen something really good, or you've risked it for a biscuit. In your department, get a biscuit. Our head teacher or our new principal, Mr. Dean, went round and gave everyone a box of biscuits and refreshments, just to lift spirits, because they are working very, very hard.
Yeah, and with everything that's going on, I mean, so some of the children naturally have suffered, right, because of obviously the lack of resources that they have. How far does that put the children behind where they should be?
I mean, again, it depends on your school setup, and depends on what exam boards and what exams they're taking, because each exam board has made their consultation and then their new guidelines for the exams in the summer different. So it is it's important for staff to make sure, and as a school, that they address any curriculum gaps. And that's hard. We've got catch-up funding from the government, so we're able to use that. And that's for all years from 7 to 11. That's our age range of our school. But it's really important that, teachers have ownership and they're given time to look at the curriculum, make sure the gaps are addressed. I mean, again, it goes back to teaching and learning. It goes back to pedagogy research. John Tate, who I think you're going to see later, his book is phenomenal, Teacher Rebooted. It's brilliant because it gives practical guidance. You're able to reflect on your practice. And obviously, Kate Jones, I follow her on Twitter. She's got a new Retrieval Practice 2 book coming out. And again, it's about that, sequencing your curriculum, interleaving your curriculum, but also retrieval practice to make sure gaps are closed.
Yeah, fantastic. If you had the resources and you had a little bit more money, I mean, what could you do to help your school or other schools, if you're working in other schools? Like, what could be done to make sure that we get these kids learning?
I mean, the biggest thing is, like I said, about the infrastructure. There's two things. One, if we go into another lockdown or bubble lockdown, the infrastructure and money to make sure that every student had internet and a laptop. And in school, extra staffing would always help. There's lots of teachers out there that are good and haven't had the opportunity to get into a classroom. I feel sorry for the teachers that are in training. It's a very different training diet this year, and as well as last year. And there's some phenomenal training providers out there. There's phenomenal teachers coming through. So a little bit more money in the staffing budget. Class sizes could reduce. We could have that one-to-one approach. It would make a difference.
So talking about the staffing budget, and this isn't a view that I have personally, but when I speak to teachers, there's certain teachers that are quite adamant on this view that, teachers are on the front line, SLT are getting paid the extra bucks, and they're not on the front line every day like teachers are. Could there not be more distribution from their wages to be put into the school? I mean, what would you say to that?
I mean, again, it depends on your school. All our vice principals teach. I teach 14 hours over 2 weeks. I line manage 5 departments. I lead on NQTs. I lead on ITT. I do the CPD. I mean, we've worked on risk assessments for COVID. We have to report back to the trust. We've got governors. We've got parents. It's a full time. And our staff do appreciate that. I know they do. They see how hard we've worked over lockdown, but also since being back in September. But again, it depends what school you're in, because, it differs.
Absolutely. I mean, there is in some respects, especially like in the London schools. I mean, I know that there's certain head teachers that are executive head teachers that report for schools in the trust, and they're obviously on massive wages, aren't they? Maybe 6 figures, if not a little bit more. 6 figures, like sort of 100k, like maybe close to 200k. Whereas certain teachers, they start on 29,000 if you're in London, 30,000 now, and 27,000 if you're out of London, 25 or 26 if you're in the fringe areas like Essex. It's a massive gap, isn't it? I mean, is it justifiable for that gap?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think, I'm a great believer, they call them grassroots teachers and grassroots head teachers, that, we've all got a rite of passage and we start at the bottom and work our way up. And I think the skill set that you get from embracing as an NQT to an RQT to taking on responsibility, you'll see yourself grow. And I do think that by the time you get to a position like myself as vice principal, I've got a wealth of knowledge, because you're not just a leader within the school, but you manage the facilities, and you talk about well-being and student well-being and parent engagement, and it's all the things behind the scenes that maybe those staff coming into teaching don't necessarily see. But I do believe that, if you've got a great CEO, great principal, and the students and the staff and the parents are working together, then I do think that they're working for their money in the right way.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, this year has been a difficult year. It's been one hell of a whirlwind. I mean, I started my own company last year expecting to get to a certain level, and then March, boom, lockdown, and we're stuck indoors for 6 months, 7 months. And you know what? I wanted to do this podcast because I had a friend about 4 weeks ago that said to me, I don't know what teachers complain about. Like they've been on holiday for the last 7 months, and it's about creating this awareness. I mean, what would you say to that?
I mean, speak to a teacher. If you speak to any teacher, I mean, having a break, wow. I mean, that's the difference about what you were saying about leaders as well. I know if you're a classroom teacher, when it comes to the 6 weeks holiday, a part of that time you can relax and you can spend time with your family or vacation or whatever. As a leader, it's constant. I often get told off, put your phone down, put your laptop away, stop working. But I'm preparing, and not just for myself, not just for my lessons, but for the good of the school, for the setup of the school, for the action plan, the academy improvement plan, the CEF. So yeah, there's no holiday.
I mean, just to highlight, because Eddie, you're very passionate, right? And it shows. It definitely shows. And obviously, I can see why you've got to where you've got to. But there's a lot of teachers that is a job to them. It's 8:30 to 3:30. You go home, don't do any work. And I can see sometimes why there is this misconception of that view on teachers. I mean, what is it about teaching that has created this passion for you?
I think it's about, I mean, I've had a great role model from my mother as my first head of department, but also some fantastic head teachers and principals. And they've always kind of almost shared this vision, and I always think it's about working hard, enjoying what you do, building that kind of relationship with students and parents, and enabling them to strive for excellence and go on to what they want to do. And it's great that I've got students that have won BAFTAs, and there's students that are at Harvard, and they still get back in contact and say thank you for the opportunities, thank you for all you do. And for me, that's worth £1 million. You know what I mean? It's just phenomenal to see that they've succeeded in something they're really, really passionate about, regardless of what field, just that they've passion, and we've supported them through that. And I think that's the good sign of a good school and a good teacher, because I think you impart your kind of attributes onto those students and see them flourish.
Fantastic. And for anyone that's kind of studying a PGCE now, obviously you said it's probably one of the most difficult years, because majority of years, the way that you teach, you kind of are a classroom presence, aren't you? You walk around the classroom, you're quite animated, but like you said earlier, you kind of, instead of you having your own classroom, you're having to move around for the kids, and you're almost having to stand in front of the classroom and talk at them, opposed to kind of being animated, aren't you? And how different is that to how
it's very different. I mean, it's very, very different. It almost goes back to didactic teaching from the front. You're in a box at the desk. But I think what's really important is if you build your relationship and rapport, to quote High School Musical, we're all in this together. And the students understand that. They understand that something's not quite right. It's a little bit different. Relationships, rapport, and that passion comes through if you're animated or not. That passion and that interest of curiosity, and pushing curiosity in children so they want to know the next bit. And you don't have to be animated to do that. You just got to have a passion and sell that passion to your students. I think that's something that really kind of resonates me when I'm walking in a classroom or along the corridor at school and I see something, I go, wow, that's fantastic. The kids are just eating out the palm of your hand.
And how difficult is it for PGCE students to because they're not necessarily learning the way they should, right? I mean, any other year they would have been taught in a slightly different way. So how hard will it be for them to rewire their teaching methods when things start getting better?
I think again, it goes down to what school you're going to join, and that's why, you know, when you go for a job interview, you've got to choose the school. It's like when you send your children to school, you know, it's got to be right for them. It's got to be right for you. And I think a good school gives a good program of support after. There's going to be gaps. There's always gaps. We've always got gaps. We're always developing. Even myself, we develop every day. We read a new book. We learn. We implement. And I think the sign of a good school, you know, takes on board those gaps or those questions. You know, for our trainee teachers, we take on a survey, we fill in their gaps and targets, and then we put a bespoke program in throughout the year. It's quite intense in the first term, but it's there to support, and it's their right. It's their CPD development. We want to make these new teachers as best they can be, because they are going to be the future.
Absolutely. And our future of our economy depends on it, doesn't it? And just for people that are considering teaching or are looking at this video with no teaching experience or are doing their PGCE, why is it more crucial than ever that we get people into the teaching industry?
We need good people because we want to create an environment. Sorry, we want to create a future for these students that are going to be the next prime ministers, the next lawyers, solicitors, hairstylists, fashion designers. You know. Retrain. Why do you need to retrain? We need these people in our environment that are going to be all different kind of experts. And I think if you're looking to get into teaching, you know, if you haven't got that ITT training provider yet, get into school and work as a graduate cover supervisor or a TA and get that experience, and you'll see the difference your daily visit to the school will make to those students, and you'll fall in love with the profession. Believe me, you'll fall in love.
Just to kind of counteract that, right? Because I've placed a lot of graduates myself into schools, and that absolutely love teaching. They go on to do their teacher training, but statistics show that within the first 4 years, a lot of teachers, from the time that they're trained to 4 years in, will probably leave the profession. Like, through your experience, why has that happened?
I think, as you said, as I've said, I think you need to find a school that's right for you to start. I think you need a good mentor, and maybe that's something that needs looking at within the schools, that they've got the right people in the right posts. You know, we're very lucky. Well, it comes down to what you do in-house. You know, you've got to invest in your staff, and if you invest in the right staff and you train them in the right way, you can use those for developing the next set of teachers.
But I've obviously heard of so many horror stories where NQTs have gone into schools, not had that right support, you know. And unfortunately, I mean, you're obviously doing a fantastic job at Bowers Park, and I mean, I know Havering schools in general, their HTTP do a phenomenal job in general, don't they? But in terms of like those NQTs or those PhD students that aren't lucky enough to find those schools, you know, because sometimes they might struggle to find the job, or like they get sold a full stream, if you like. And that's sometimes enough to throw these teachers out of the profession. I mean, how can we make sure that that's not happening and we're retaining these teachers?
I mean, again, it's development and it's putting training back, but also it's what we want our students at Bower Park to have. There's attributes with that: resilience, perseverance, that autonomy. And we had a teacher that started at a different school. It wasn't the school for him. And left after a term because he wanted to come to Bower Park. And I think that's what I'm saying. You've got to find the school that's right for you. There is a school there for you. Yeah. And don't be afraid to go, well, actually, this is not working. I need to look somewhere else. Absolutely.
I always say to PGCE students, just because you get a job and it's the first school you work in, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to be the school you end your career in. You know, like it's about gaining that experience and learning from it and then moving on if you need to, you know. But it's hard sometimes. You know, when you're like so passionate, you get this heart because you haven't had that right support, and it's just about kind of creating that awareness. You know, like it's going to be okay. You just need to find that right school, like you said.
I mean, that's why I'm an advocate for graduate TAs, graduate cover supervisors, because you're in a school. You get to know the systems, you get to know the routine. If you find a right training provider that can then place you in that school, that works. I mean, we've got a testament for that. We've got lots of ex-students that have come to work with us as graduates and are now brilliant teachers, absolutely brilliant teachers, because they've known the environment, they've got used to it, they know the routines, and it's about that relationship with the school.
And for any graduates that are looking to get into teaching, what would you look for? If they were coming to apply for your school, what would you look for?
I'd want them to be able to present clearly. I want them to have a passion, and I want them to be able to share that passion. And it could be in the presentation, in an interview, that they've got a passion about cycling or art. They can sell that to me, and I will want that person, because passion, relationships, rapport, and that interest to share knowledge is so important to me.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, like for everything, like in your career, everything that you've achieved, like how do the future teachers progress in the same level that you do? Like, do you have any advice for them?
I think you set yourself targets. I mean, every teacher in the school has an appraisal or a target from their NQT or their RQT program. So you've got targets, but set yourself targets. Set yourself a goal, but be mindful of the fact you don't have to do it all at once. You know, and the other tip would be, take it slow. That it's not a race. You know, take it slow. Build your craft, hone your craft. And try and learn from as many people as you can. In your spare time, go and speak to the Senko. In your spare time, go and speak to the senior leader who deals with behaviour. Get out and see good teachers within your school or other schools if you can. And then gradually over time, build your skill set.
And what sort of are the biggest challenges that they should be expecting to face as new qualified teachers or graduates?
I think you got to set your expectations from the beginning, and if you say something, follow it through. You know, don't set a child a detention and then go, "It's all right." You know, set yourself high expectations, and the students will go with you. They want boundaries. We do as society. We live within rules. They want rules, and they want you to be fair. My mum was strict and fair, and it suited me.
Fantastic. I mean, you've obviously given us a lot of information, and it's a lot of information to take away. Regarding the free school meals, what the government should do a little bit more, and advice you've given to like PhD students and graduates. Overall, like what do you think the recruitment looks like for schools, and what does the future of education look like in the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, it's really difficult. Like I said, a lot of schools have got their applications on pause. And where do we go from here in terms of blending learning, and are we going to be at home? I think as professionals, we need to embrace technology. We need to make sure students become more independent in their learning approach. And it goes back to that quality first teaching. For me, that's everything. So using research, pedagogy, and up-to-date practice, so staff can impart knowledge and get outcomes for students, regardless if it's in school or remotely.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of obviously recruiting now, like with the uncertainty of what's happening, I'm sure a lot of PhD students are worried about finding a job for September next year. What would you say to them?
I mean, there's always going to be movement. So there's going to be people retiring. You know, apply as soon as you can, or sign up for an agency, and there you go, and have a look round. I mean, and sometimes it might not be on your doorstep, so be prepared to travel into London or out of London. But if teaching's for you, you'll find a way.
Fantastic. I mean, look, you've obviously given us so much information, and just to kind of re-emphasize, the whole point of this podcast is to create awareness for teaching. I mean, it's such a undervalued profession in some respects, and it's a shame because you guys are on the front line and you are doing so much hard work, and the future of our economy in so many ways depends on good quality teachers teaching the future generation, you know. But yeah, I mean, thank you so much. I mean, is there any last bit of information or anything that you'd like to say, just to kind of give information, whether it be the future teachers or just anyone in the profession?
I mean, my biggest thing is, remember, it's not just the teachers. There's support staff, non-teaching staff, our pastoral teams, our admin teams. And without the whole system working together, then it becomes a struggle. So I'd just like to say, yes, it is about quality first teaching, but you can't offer quality first teaching if you do not have a team around you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Eddie. We'll leave it there, but thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's been lovely. It's nice to hear it from somebody that's so high up in the school, you know, because I think there's a lot of sometimes dissatisfaction in teaching, and There's a lot of sort of criticism, but it's nice to hear the hard work that you guys are doing, and it's so important to get that message out there, you know?
Well,
So,
thank you for having me, and it is really important that the message is out there, but thank you for asking me on.
no worries. Thanks, Eddie.
Take care.